I was just thinking that too often, I think, as followers of Christ, we compartmentalize our life, which means we have boxes for everything to fit into. And then we do the same thing with our faith and our walking with God, that we think that God shows up here and here and here, but this isn't related at all. And one of the things about a weekend like this at camp, it reminds me over and over again that, God was just as much a part of what we were doing. We were playing cornhole and laughing and carrying on, eating popcorn and having water and stuff up there as he is here this morning and everywhere is in between. It's kind of like this God, if we'll let it, he provide. He says, I actually provide. He actually spreads a table for us, or presents a table for us, or provides a table in the midst of our enemies. So on a regular basis, when we gather together, it's like a big smorgasbord. We're going to actually have a covered dish dinner afterwards, which is always great. And wondering, we don't even know yet what we're going to have because everybody's brought different things. But a lot of ways, even the service this morning is just a lot of different things that are going to happen. We've already had, we've had announcements. You say, well, announcements are kind of boring, but Jeff even brings a little thing with now this, this fresh in, and we laugh at him, and he's nervous there, but he's also, if you know Jeff well enough, he does those things sometimes. Yeah, he tried. And then our worship time and the kids' message and those things. And so I'm going to actually start out with a little bit of my testimony, but I'm not just want to tell my story. It's used to illustrate a few things. We do have a baptism this morning. I know I told you the last couple of weeks we didn't, but we do have a baptism that's come about within the last week. And so there's going to be a brief testimony with that, which we'll get to in a minute. But I want to share a little bit of my testimony. I want to start with a passage out of Psalm 139. Can everybody hear okay? I'm trying to use my teacher's voice as much as possible. Psalm 139 and verses 13 to 16. It says this. It's the psalmist reflecting before the Lord. He says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." And I want that as a backdrop for what I want to share with you about some of my story this morning. God created me. I believe that beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he knit me together in my mother's womb over 55 years ago. He made me in what he calls the secret place, because no human being had laid eyes upon me, had thought of me or anything like that. It was his work. And then it says that he saw my unformed body before it came to be. And then the other thing that catches me too, as I was reflecting back, is that he ordained all of my days, the ones I've lived, today, and all the days until he either returns or I die and go to be with him. And it says he wrote them all in a book ahead of time, the things that were going to happen before any of them it came to be. And what I always reflect on that when I really gain reassurance that God made me and formed me and made me who I am with a definitive, concrete plan of what he wanted to use that for. He decided where I was going to be born, who my parents would be, the geographic location that I'd be born into, and everything in between. And so he caused me to be born on June 22nd, 1967. Was I born in Lowell or Watertown? They don't remember. I was not there. Well, I was there in Lowell. I was born in Lowell. The reason I say that I was born in Lowell, but sometimes people went to Watertown. I was born in Lowell on June 22nd, 1967. I just had my 55th birthday a few weeks ago, or about a couple months ago. He caused me to be born to Lauren and Marilyn Woodrick, who are sitting right there. They are and they were godly people who had dedicated, before I ever came along, had dedicated their lives to serve God. I can honestly tell you that I don't remember a single day in my whole life where the most important thing in those two people's lives was walking with God and how to do that in a way that would please him. They've been an inspiration, and God has used them dramatically throughout my life and continues today to use them to mold me and shape me into who I am. And then I want to say this, that God brought me to him to make a commitment of my life to him in Christ when I was in middle school. It's not that I didn't walk with God before that. I was a very sensitive little boy all the way through it. We went to Sunday school, went to church. I knew all that stuff there, but it became very personal to me when I was in my middle school years. and I asked Christ to be in my heart. I had a dream that made it very clear that I had run up short, that I wasn't ready if I were to die, and I was scared. And I went and talked to my dad about it, and he led me to Jesus. And then I processed through over the next few months and was baptized as a believer. In 1978, Dad was called into the pastorate, and that was my first foray down into the South Jefferson area. I think we moved in the fall of 79, if I remember correctly, where we literally moved. Dad had become the pastor of the church. It brought me to the church that you're in now because he was pastoring at that time, before we changed names and moved. And actually that move in 79 was a dark time in my life. I was in 7th grade, 5 weeks into my 7th grade year, and it required me to make all new friends. I knew one person in the whole school, in the whole junior high when I showed up. It was tough. And I believe that in needing to make friends, and I'm not, whether you think so or not, you see me up front talking all the time, I'm not a tremendously outgoing person. And so it was extremely hard at that time. I think that it actually had drastic effects on me socially up through, and I think I still pay a price somewhat from that to this day. I'm inhibited in new areas, in new places, around unfamiliar faces. And so it's a constant challenge, and I think some of it has to do with that time. Interesting thing, though, God spoke to me, has spoken to me throughout my life, but at different times about the call on my life that he had. I can still remember I was working on firewood at the house. I was driving the tractor, and I had this impression in my heart. I was thinking, it was like, I think before my junior year, around that time, of God, what do you have for me to do? And I kind of felt he put it on there. You're going to be like, he said, and the idea of being a doctor came in, but I knew I didn't want to be a medical doctor. And he immediately said, I want a doctor because you're going to help fix people's spirit. You're going to work with me to help people come into spiritual health. Right over there, it looked a lot different way back when I was a teenager. But I was on staff here as an 18-year-old, right out of high school. And they used to give us, I don't think it was once a day, it might have been once a week because things have drastically changed. We were always short-staffed and that kind of thing there. But I had a devotional time, and somewhere there used to be a cabin over there, and I kind of walked down, and I was sitting in that general area over there between here and the water, and was praying and read my Bible, was seeking the Lord, and I felt very clearly in that moment. I had gotten the taste of what it felt like, and to be used of the Lord to minister to young people and to share the good news and to love kids and that kind of stuff there in that way. And I felt that God made it clear to me. He says, I have called you to a life of ministry. And I can remember praying a prayer over there in the trees saying, Lord, I don't know exactly what that call of ministry is, but can you help me walk in it when it comes, and don't let me miss it when it comes. Fast forward to that as a young adult in my early 20s. I was upstairs in my bedroom at home, and I was again in my devotional time reading, and I must have been reading through the life of Moses, or had been, and I felt the Lord I stopped, and I was just meditating on that, and I got an instantaneous, he says, I've called you to be like Moses. And I listened to that, and he was simply saying, as I'm calling you to take people who are in spiritual bondage and lead them into the promised land of freedom, which is on this earth, but also to their heavenly promised land there. And in that moment, I don't know how to explain it, but the presence of the Lord was so powerful in the room that evening, that I literally had to get out of bed and I had to get down on my knees. And it was a wonderful feeling, but also overwhelming at the same time. His power was so close, it's like, God, I don't know if I can take a whole lot more of this. It was so powerful. And there was another time, again in my early to mid 20s, I was in a job that I absolutely hated. And I can remember driving into work one morning, and I had this feeling in my heart for a while that change was coming, that I wasn't going to be in that situation much longer, and that God was about ready to unlock a lot of stuff in my life. And I can remember the prayer I prayed that morning. Lord, I know you got something for me. Don't let me miss it. But in the meantime, I have to go to this job that I absolutely detest and hate, and I'm not being very successful at. But I remember asking him, Lord, help me to be faithful there until you bring the next thing along. Help me to be faithful in general while I'm waiting. Now I want to read to you another passage, John chapter 10. Change gears a little bit. Those are all really great things. But then in John chapter 10, Jesus said this, I'm the gate, Jesus speaking, whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. Jesus saying, basically, I'm the way, the truth, and life. I'm how you get to a relationship with God. But then Jesus said this, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. And the reason I say that is Jesus came into my life to bring abundance and fullness of life to me, and then for me to find that purpose there. But there's an enemy, the devil, who was working overtime in my life at the same time to try to steal, kill, and destroy things in my own life to destroy me, but also to prevent me from walking in what God had called me to do. I spent over 10 years from the time I was a sophomore until I had surgery to fix the problem. I had ulcerative colitis, it probably, if it wasn't for modern medicine, it probably would have killed me in the end. I probably would have developed cancer and died. But over 10 years of chronic diarrhea, like when we say not always even making to the bathroom in time, all the way through my high school years, all the way through my college years, and that kind of thing. It was terrible. And it was one of those things again that many, many times I would be in the worst spots in a lot of ways, and I'd be angry, and then actually somewhat angry with God and tell him that. But God never got angry with me for letting him know how I felt. I could not understand how this could be part of his plan, how he could allow it to happen, because it was clearly getting in the way of me walking in kingdom work, I felt. And I really felt the enemy had come. He had to have gotten permission to bring that on. And God actually has been faithful to use that in my life. What the enemy meant to destroy, God used to bring abundant life to me and change me forever. In my senior year of high school, I'm ashamed to say, I had asked Christ in my heart, and I was working as hard as I could through all my schooling and as a young person and being a youth of trying to shine for Jesus and do that. The school I went to was a pretty bleak place. There weren't that many Christians there. And some unfortunate things happened with adults in my life that were authority figures, not from the church, but in school and situations where really I felt, looking back, they really let me down. They really let me down and didn't communicate well and didn't handle me well. And I can remember in the midst of that, and also seeing the inner workings living in a pastor's home, of seeing some of the things that happen to godly people when they're doing their best to help people and how they get raked over the coals because they've got a big heart. And I can remember actually my anger got the best of me, and I remember telling God one day, if this is what, in my own life and watching across, if this is what serving God is all about, I'm really not sure I want it anymore. And I went from trying to shine for Jesus to walking away from that and making terribly bad decisions for about 3 months of my life. And like I said, it was like a switch flipped, and I went from doing what I knew was right to doing what I knew was wrong. The beautiful thing is, God had worked so much in my heart that it did not take very long, first off, to realize I wasn't fooling my parents. And then when I realized I wasn't fooling them, I realized that I really wasn't fooling God. He saw it all and knew it all. But he was there during the midst of all those things. And I realized again, God was trying to ruin, not God, but the enemy was trying to bring me to spots to do things that would ruin or keep me from walking in what God had me for. And then, actually, believe it or not, that was just a matter of months before I ended up here at Beaver Camp on staff. And a dramatic change. God met me at a meeting once because I didn't know if I could stop the lifestyle I'd stepped into, even though it was only 3 months. I really didn't feel I had control over it anymore. And I responded to an altar call and asked for prayer. And they prayed that the Spirit of God would indwell me and give me the power to walk in a way away from those things and stay away from that. And God did that dramatically. As a young man again in my mid-20s, early to mid-20s, I was serving God. I was in the midst of another job that I didn't like. It was a kind of not a dark time, but one of the valleys, because I knew God had things for me to do. I wasn't walking in them yet, and it was a waiting time. And I developed a serious blood infection. Started in my urinary tract, and being the young man that I was, I ignored it, and ignored it, and ignored it, and ignored it. And a long story short, I went to work one day, and I ended up in the middle of that day, it got worse and worse and worse throughout the day, and I had pain in my abdomen. It was in my legs, and it was slowly working its way up, which is real serious. And I pulled off the road on Route 11, north of Philadelphia, heading up to Gouverneur. In that area, there was a rest area there, and I had pulled off the road there because I had quit early in the day because I didn't feel well. My customers were saying, "You don't look good," and I knew I wasn't doing well, and I pulled off to rest. And I got out of my car. I sat in the car, and I was in agony at that point. And I ended up crawling over the edge and walking down in the grass and laying in the grass in this rest area all by myself. And I was pretty sure that I was going to die because it had gotten to the spot where I didn't know. I was driving a standard car. I didn't know if I would have enough strength to push the clutch it anymore. I had tried previously. There was a tractor trailer in the rest area. I had gotten enough courage and enough strength to walk over and knock on the door. He comes out and I said, I really need to get to the hospital. And I can't do it myself. I need somebody to help me. And he said, "I'll go get help." And he drove away in the tractor trailer, and nobody came. Nobody came. And I crawled back over the edge and was laying in the grass over there. And I'm just like, God. And it's interesting. You say, that's horrible. But all I can tell you is, in the midst of that, thinking that this was it, I'm thinking about, Lord, and I know in my heart deep down I'm right with him. But I had this prayer, Lord, I'm pretty sure that things are good between you, but I want to make sure. And it's not that I had doubt, but it was like one of those deals where, and in that moment, there's a great peace that if that's what happens, that's what happens, and it's okay. And to finish that story off, I decided I'd give it one more shot, and I had it planned that I hope that I can get the clutch in and hope that when I get out to the road that there's not traffic coming. And my intention was to pull out in first gear and just let it idle down the road. And the first house that I come to, I'm going to pull it in and push the brake and stall the car out, and hopefully I can get help. And as I pulled up, I saw very quickly a car off to the side on the opposite side had pulled off a truck. And I pushed the clutch in, and I stalled the car there, and I was like trying to wave them down. I got my car out, and they came across. They said, "What's wrong?" And I told them, I'm really, really sick. I need to get to the hospital. I need help. And they said, "We'll go get help and come back." And they did. Within minutes, there was a siren. They rushed me to the hospital. One of those times there, I've been in an ambulance a couple times in my life, but on that one, between just south of Gouverneur to Watertown, they were flying back, and I can hear the radio going back and forth, and ETA, and every time they'd go through a town, you can hear them hit the slow a little bit and hit the sirens and then gun the engine again, and they rushed me to the hospital. And I avoided emergency surgery. A lot of things happened in that one there, and I pulled through. I was in the hospital for a week before they let me go. And I was just saying that again, that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, is trying to prevent the plan that God has in our lives, in my life. But the Bible says, greater is he that lives in you than he that lives in the world. And that if God has a plan for us, he's going to see to it that it gets done. I also had choices to make. And as a senior in high school, I had thought in my junior year, my brother had gone to school down in Virginia, and he had gone early in his life, and I really basically worshiped the ground my brother walked on. He had actually gone and combined his senior year of high school and freshman year of college together. And he was down there, and that was my plan. I was gonna leave the area. I was gonna go down there and combine the two together. And in the end, I made a choice to stay. And I think that was the right thing. Although I ended up in rebellion and that thing there, but there was things that happened in there that God has used in that time there. I also had another choice I had to make was I went to school for math, and I was studying to be a school teacher. And I'd gone through my student teaching at a really nice, beautiful school district in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I got to the end of the year with it, and I was naive at the time. I didn't really understand. The chair of the math department down there in the high school came up to me with about a month to go in my placement, and he said, "We have an opening next year, and we really would like to interview you for the position." And I just think, well, yeah, one of many. I realize now that they probably had seen and talked to the department and really wanted to bring me on. But he said, "I realize that you're from Northern New York. I just need to know if we're going to interview you, would you take the position if you were here, or are you going to move home? What's your plans?" And so I did some praying and thinking, and all I felt in my heart is, I need to go home. I need to go back to Northern New York. And so I walked away from what probably would have been a pretty good gig down there, not knowing it, to up here. Later on, I was in a lot of no-wage jobs. I'll share one of them in a minute here. A lot of jobs that I hated that were not, you definitely didn't need a college education to have. I had made a decision at one point in between jobs that I would pursue possibly going back to graduate school for math to maybe become a college professor. And I got all the way through that, and I was really in great turmoil. I got accepted at the program at Potsdam on the spot. When he looked at my transcripts and explained my background, what I had, he said, it's a little bit after the deadline or whatever, but he says, I'll personally approve it today. And so I had to get back to them relatively quickly, get where I was going to go. And I can remember being in turmoil. My brother said something. He said this, you do what brings you peace, because God is the author of peace, and peace can't exist if God's not there. And the peaceful thing was, no, don't go to graduate school. So I didn't. So I stayed in these nowheres jobs. Like I said, being committed in the faith and being faithful in the midst of horrible jobs. I was a salesman, abject failure at it. Horrible. Just, I can't tell you how bad I was as a salesman. But being faithful on doing that, waiting on God to bring the next thing along. And it ended up with me having to be faithful. I got out of sales work. I was in between jobs. There was nothing in front of me. I didn't have bills. And I really, Lord, I know you have things, but I don't know what it is. So I'm about this time of the year, my job, my income was this. I weeded an 80-year-old man's garden in Adams Center. And I can remember he would take me out. He says, see all that? And it was overgrown. He says, clean it up. And I'm out there cleaning up one day and saying, God, what in the world am I doing here? I got a degree in math. I'm a trained high school teacher, and I'm pulling weeds. And again, the only thing is, wait. I had to wait for my soulmate and my partner in ministry. I began to wonder if I'd ever find the right woman to marry. I had to wait for that. And I had another time in my life. At this point now, things had changed. I'm married, I have a family. I'm teaching at Faith Fellowship Christian School. And I had another ministry opportunity came along. I was offered a pretty good position. They wanted me to come on to do some things educationally at this place and also to come in to be in the leadership team of the church. And it sounded like everything I ever wanted. And I knew I was called to ministry. But there was one thing that was said that day. As they were presenting different things, they said, and I understand that you have some kind of a teaching gift. We'll find a way to make that fit somehow. And instantly my heart's saying, absolutely not. Because at that spot I had known that was my primary gifting, and you just don't make room in a position for your primary gifting. And I said, no, I won't do it. And it wasn't long after that I was called to pastor the church here. Associate pastor at the time, because Dad was there. I was called to do that, and it was called by the church leadership at the time, but I want to tell you it wasn't called by the church leadership. It was a call of God directly. I was talking to Dad. He presented it to me. He says, do you feel called to ministry? I said, I felt called to ministry since I was 18 and maybe even sooner than that, beyond a shadow of a doubt. He said, I didn't ask you that question. I'm asking you, are you called to pastor at that spot, Woodville Mennonite Church? Is that where God has called you? And I'm like, couldn't answer that one. So he said, you need to figure that out. And God dramatically spoke to me, woke me up. And anybody knows me, I'm not a morning person. Early, 5:30 a.m., I wake up startled because somebody had whispered in my ear. And immediately, I look there, there's nobody there. I look on the other side, my wife's sound asleep. It was so real, I got out of bed and went and checked on every one of my kids. They were all sound asleep. I crawled back into bed, began to wonder, what was that all about? What was that all about? I think we went to home group the next night. And there was, as was the case a lot of times, we'd have a chair in the middle of the room and anybody could be prayed for. And I said, I have some decisions to make and I need to hear God's voice about them. I didn't say what it was, I just said I need that. And Fred, who's not here, Fred Langworthy, came up, and as they're getting ready to pray, he puts his hand on my knee and he looks up at me and says, God, I really think that God has already spoken to you. He's already told you. And instantly it took me back to that God had whispered my name to get my attention, and that settled it for me that not only had he called me to ministry, but this is where he had called me. And I've been doing it now for 27 years. I want to say this and declare before you today. I have a call. The church called me, and they continue to support us, which I appreciate. But my call, my responsibility is to God and not to man. Although I do have a responsibility to you, but there's a higher responsibility, and that's to God. To walk in the call that he's given me, to utilize the giftings that he placed in me, not for my benefit, but to benefit others, and to help people grow to the fullest measure possible. That's really fresh for me in these days to do those things, because as I get older, I don't have as much energy as I used to have, and I don't have all the extra space in my brain as I used to have. So it's becoming more and more, I find myself thinking more and more, what is it truly, God, that you've asked me to do? And I want to be faithful to do that as best I can while I have breath to breathe. And I want to just share this with you as a church family. Tammy and I will be gone over the next couple weekends. We're going to take a little bit of time for R&R. And one of the things that, it's always nice to get away and get a break, but the other thing I really feel in this one is I need to hear the voice of the Lord. He's been sharing some things with me that he has for me to do, and I want further clarification on those things. So I'm asking you to pray for me, pray for Tammy as we go over the next couple weeks, to hear the voice of the Lord, for him to be able to further solidify some of the things. And I got some of that stuff I'm going to share with you guys around annual meeting time and some vision stuff. So you can be praying about that. And I want to ask this question: why all this? Why me? Why now? And all those things, because it's really not about me. And this week in my Bible reading, I read in Jeremiah chapter 1. And this just jumped off the page. I've read it numerous times before, but it jumped off the page. It says this. Jeremiah was reflecting. It says, "The word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." The sovereign Lord said, and Jeremiah said, "I don't know how to speak. I'm only a child." But the Lord said, "Don't say I'm only a child. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you to. Don't be afraid, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord." Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, "Now I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms, to uproot and to tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." And it took me back to some of those other things. God knew me before he formed me. He set me apart. I've known that I've been called to ministry since my teenage years. I knew that he had set me apart, and I believed right from the womb to do his work. I also believe, too, because the reason it hits me is my primary gifting that God has given me, and I've worked at developing over the years, is to teach his word. And so he's put his words in my mouth. He sent me to where, it's interesting, he sends me to wherever he wants me to go to speak the words that he wants spoken. And there's another spot, and I think later on in that passage, where it says that God actually, he promised Jeremiah, "I will work to see to it that my words are fulfilled." Because they're not my words. And those things really ring true. And I'm not trying to ring my own bell. I'm trying to get you in on a story that's all about God and what he's trying to do. Why did he do all this? Not because I'm a good guy, and not because I'm perfect, and not because I haven't actually walked the other way and tried to run the other way at times. He had a plan, he had a plan for me, but there's a bigger plan that I just am a part of. He had a plan for other people that required me to be involved in their life. He had a plan that I would have a family and I'd have the children that I have. And that's great and that's fulfilling. Why? Because he's got a destiny for them to walk in the things of the Lord. He had a plan for me, and this was a prophecy when I was a young man in my early 20s when I was seeking and knowing God had, and I'm in that waiting mode. He had a plan to use me to give scriptures to people, to take the word of God and put it into language that people can understand. And that's exactly what I believe God has called me to do, and I endeavor to do week after week, every moment, whenever I'm in front of people. He actually had a plan for me to lead this church. He had a plan for me to have an impact on the place where he planted me, wherever that happens to be. In 1 Kings 10:9, the Queen of Sheba, the back one, that's when she came to visit Solomon in all of his splendor to see if what she'd been told was true. And she actually seeing all the things there and seeing his wisdom and seeing the magnificence of all of that, but specifically the wisdom that he shared. She said this, "Praise be to the Lord your God who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness." Do you notice she pulled away? It was not about Solomon and the blessings he received. It was because he loved Israel so much that he put him early in his life as a godly person to bring prosperity and justice and righteousness. And I really believe that, I often felt that way, that God loves other people so much that he places people like you and I in their midst so that they can hear about Jesus. Again, this isn't all about me. I've just given you an example this morning of what God wants to do, ready, in each and every one of us. Different gifts, different callings, a different planting. In other words, you don't encounter the same people I do. But he has giftings and callings and plantings where he's placing all of you to achieve his purposes, not just in your life. Expand your thinking to achieve his purposes in other people's lives. God is no respecter of persons. What he's done for people like me and others, he'll do for you. But it requires us to embrace his call. It requires us to commit to walk in that call. And it requires us to make the necessary choices to be diligent in keeping the course. Recently, we've had a couple things that have gone on that have been absolutely burning in my heart. And one of them was, I remind you, a few weeks back, if you have not had a chance to listen to the message Dan Tabalt preached a couple weeks ago at church, get on our YouTube page and listen to that. A very, a now word that has great challenges in it. But I'm going to share a couple quotes from that. He said this to our church, to us. And I would say that you can take this, if you're here this morning, whether you attend our church or not, take these things as the Lord saying that. You are a people of God that he has called for this moment. You have a time, this is your moment. You were born for such a time as this. You say, yeah, but that was written to Esther. But he addressed that. He said, that was written for Esther, but it's something he's telling us today. You were born for such a time as this. And then he said this, there's a time slot that God has given us to do something. This moment in time right now is a slot of time that he's given you and I to do something for his kingdom. He says we can sit still and wait, or we can activate. And then something that Jeff and I did a series on, and we're still actually, the behind a lot of stuff we're sharing right now is being prepared for action to do things in the kingdom. Dan also said, a time for harvest. God is going to add people to the church. And if you remember, he said this too. He looked across the church, and the day he was there was a lot of empty chairs. And he said, there's a prophetic picture in front of you, the empty chairs. And he wasn't saying that it was a bad thing that they weren't full, but he said, will you pray and believe for God to fill the church? Will you pray for the people that God has already willed to fill the empty seats of the church? Okay? And then there's another guy that I listen to periodically online, a guy by the name of Jonathan Kahn. For those that were at, we did a simulcast to him called The Return a couple years ago. It's pre-COVID, or right at the beginning of COVID, or in the middle of it, or whatever. And these are some things that a message I listened to this week that he said that are along the same line. He said, God is real, God is alive, and God is on the throne, and nothing can remove him. Another one, the gates of hell will not and cannot prevail against you. And if you've been at church, you know that we preached a series of sermons on, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And he said this too, almost exactly what Dan said. Our moment as followers of Christ is now. It's now. He said, I have called you, and he said this too, almost exactly what Dan said. I have called you into being for such a time as this. And then this, fear not, for I am with you. I'll strengthen you and I'll uphold you. With God, nothing shall be impossible. He said this, your call is so high. He's trying to build the people that are listening. Your call is so high, and you must live as such. And live a life worthy of the calling that God has given you. Take up your call. And then this one, learn to live on the offensive rather than the defensive. Even though everything around us in our culture and world is crumbling, he said, light shines brightest in the midst of darkness. It's It's not time to go on the defense. It's time to go on the offense, which means to share the gospel and be proactive to do that. And I want to encourage all of you this morning. God has called you. Individualize it. God has called you for such a time as this. God has given everybody in listening distance today a sphere of influence, a group of people that he's placed you in the midst of. He planted you there. And his intention is that you would show those people what following Jesus is all about. He's placed you there to help lead other people to find him, to find his love, to experience his life-changing forgiveness and grace. Now is the time. This is the moment. And we need to be prepared for action now more than ever. God has a mighty plan in our midst, and his desire is to use us in the place he's planted us for that plan. And all I can simply ask you is, do you feel that moment in your heart? And you have to answer that question. Maybe you've never heard anything like this before, but this moment is your heart going pitter-patter. Do you feel that moment, the sense of urgency, those things, that now is that time? It's not a time to be afraid. It's a time of action and kingdom growth. I'm going to step aside for a second. Kenny has been up here for half of the summer as a camper for one, and then several weeks as a team leader training, working and with the kids up here. And I had a conversation with him yesterday a little bit about some of the things that God did in his life and some of the things he's facing. So I've asked him to share a little bit along those lines. So Kenny's going to come up and do that right now.
All right. So for those of you who don't know, I am Kenny Zare. I was born in a Christian household. So God was always in our lives, but when I was younger, it was kind of more of I really feared God in the sense of I didn't have a relationship with God. It was more of oh, you sin, you're going to hell. So that was what my childhood was like. But then I remember in a Sunday school, or it might have been a youth group, it was with, just in that youth group, we talked about how making our faith our own, and that as teenagers now, our faith has to be separate from our parents. And so that was something that I kind of struggled with, just trying to identify my faith and building a relationship with the Lord. And for a while, I just didn't know what that would be. And so over the past year, I kind of it was a really, I don't want to say dark time, but there was a kind of rough time in this past year that I kind of stepped away a little bit in my relationship with God. And it was really weird. It was a really bad time. But and this was when I had signed up to work here this summer. And so I was really struggling with I remember I went to staff training at the beginning of the summer, and I was man, I really shouldn't be here. I was thinking, I don't feel like I'm in a spot in my life that I could minister to these kids, when right now I was just kind of in a lost and broken state. And so that's something I really struggled with at the beginning, but I don't know, just listening to other staff members' messages this summer, it's really reinforced that idea of that, nobody's perfect. And so even though I've made mistakes, nobody's really worthy to minister, but it's a job that we have to do. And so I kind of just had that thought in my head. And so, yeah, I TLT'd this summer, which it's basically being a junior counselor here. So I get to lead a lot of campers, and I actually had a lot of conversations with campers about faith. And so my first week of TLTing, I was in a cabin, and our cabin we had this one really difficult camper. And so it was a struggle because I kind of lost my patience at times, and it could have been better. But on our last night, so this would have been a Thursday night, the counselor who I was with for that week opened up a little about his experiences, and he kind of got emotional about it, which just made the entire cabin emotional. It was a really emotional wreck at that point. And so we're all just sitting there. It was lights out, so we all go to sleep. My counselor's out taking a shower, and I all of a sudden hear like one of my campers start to cry. And I'm like, all right, time to be that TLT. This is what I get paid for. And so I walked over. He's on the top bunk, so I kind of like stood up on the bunk, asked him what was wrong. And he instantly just goes, I miss my uncle. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So he opened up to me about how he had recently lost his uncle to suicide. And that was really tough to hear, because like this camper, so like he was really difficult at times because he just wouldn't listen, but at the same time he seemed to like really cling to like the male staff members, and it made sense at that point. So that really taught me that like even though we can't see the full picture, like everything has a reason. And so he's telling me all this, and I'm a very emotional person, so I'm doing my best not to just start crying, because I'm like, I have to be strong for this camper's sake. And so actually at that point I'm like, all right, I can't handle this as well as the counselor. So I actually went into the bathroom, got my counselor out of the shower, and was like, hey, I really need your help right now. And at that same point, another camper starts crying, and I'm like, okay, time for round two. So I went to that camper, and he started talking about how he had recently just lost his grandmother to cancer, which I guess I could more relate to that than the camper who had just lost his uncle. Because for those of you who don't know, I lost both of my grandfathers to cancer when I was really young, so that kind of sucks. But he was just talking about that and how like his family's not overly religious, but like his grandmother was really like the only person in his life who was open about her faith and really like brought him to Christ. And so I did my best to like reassure him that that she's in a better place now, and that she's in a place that like she can't be hurt anymore, and that it was I tried just to reassure him to like take comfort in the fact that that she is in a better place, and that she can watch over him now, and that to rejoice in the fact that she's with her Savior now, which he actually took it well, considering this kid was like 10. It was really like good conversation. But then like, so after me and the counselor had finished with that, we like stepped outside the cabin to like kind of debrief, because we just went through a lot talking with these campers, and I just kind of started crying. And I was like, it felt like I was unworthy, because I'm like, what right do I have to minister to these kids when I was at a very lost and broken state in my life? And I had a good conversation with him about that even though, yes, that I am not in the best place, that I still helped them, and that was God using me to help in that scenario. So that felt good. And then, so that was just in week 1. And so the rest of the summer I had similar experiences, and I'd like to believe I got progressively better at handling them, but I don't know. I probably didn't. But it really just like, over the summer I realized that like, I'm like, wow, my faith is so much stronger at camp than it is when I'm at home. And that really stuck with me, because I remembered my first year at teen camps, this would have been 2021, the COVID year. There was this one staff member here. He had lifeguarded that summer, and he led a cabin devo. It was late at night, and we were all by a fire. And he said that the fire is our faith, and then he took like a lid to a tote and just started like really fanning the fire. And he said, that's your faith when you're at camp. And then the fire would die out, and he would say, that's your faith when you're at home. And just urged us to like keep our faith strong when we go home, which is something I really want to do. Because like I feel like I'm in such a better place at camp. But at the same time, it's really easy to have a strong faith at camp because I'm surrounded by people who have the same mindset as I do, and people that can just help me. Whereas at home, like a lot of my friends, they really can't. Like, and so, yeah, I'm struggling with the thought of like that I'm gonna go home and just fall back into the same stuff. And so I'm really trying not to, but it's really tough. Because, I mean, it's like that old saying, like, you surround yourself with trash, you'll become trash. But if you surround yourself with good people, you're like them. And so, like, I've made a lot of friends this summer. And I really hope that I can keep in contact with them, because I do want to maintain my faith strong so that when I come back next summer, it can just be a constant growth in my relationship with Christ. And yeah. So I guess like if I had a message about this whole just jumble that I've presented to you, it would be to just like be more deliberate in your faith. Like, one staff member gave a message this summer, and it was like, it shouldn't be like you get out of bed in the morning and be like, oh, I gotta go read my Bible and pray some more. It should be you get up in the morning and like you want to do that. Like you actively pursue and want to pray and want to read your Bible. It should be something you look forward to every morning, which that's a place I really strive to be, but I think it'll be a while until I get to there. And so I do have a verse that I found last night. I gotta open to it real quick. So it's 1 John 2, 3 through 6. We know that we have come to him if we keep his commands. Whoever says, I know him, but does not do what he commands is a liar, and the truth is not in that person. But if anyone obeys his word, love for God is truly made complete in them. This is how we know we are in him. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. So basically that verse is just that like you can't be all talk and no walk, basically. like it's easy to say like, oh yeah, when I go back home, it's easy to say like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, but then I just have no relationship with him and just fall into the same categories as the rest of my friends. Because like as a Christian, we are called to be different, and like I don't know what God's plan is for me, but like I hope that I can be like a light to certain people in a way that like people can see that I'm different and maybe spark conversation. Maybe I can help them, but I don't know. I'm young. Well, there's a lot of life I have left to live. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, that's basically all I had. So.
I thought that was very fitting for like the idea of the time is now, the moment is now. And I know we've got some staff members here, and you guys are all probably either going back to something, or some of you may be starting a brand new chapter. And that's true of everybody in that's listening today to varying degrees. And I just want to encourage all of you. He said, you know, the fanning into flame, the gift that God has given you, and keeping that faith burning. But then when you stop fanning it, it can weaken off. And you know, same thing we know, if we put extra wood on the fire and keep wood on, it'll keep burning. But if you take a piece out and let it sit by itself, it'll smolder and die out. The problem is that God seems to plant us in the middle of places with other people that don't know him or are struggling to use us. But one thing you've got to have, all of us have to have, and that's why we have church family, that's why we have church services, that's why we have home groups, that's why we have gatherings, youth group, all the different things, Sunday school, is what? So that as you go out into the world to shine for Jesus, you come back and have a way to be filled and to be roaring again, so that when you go out, that it's like you're taking like a stick, that's a torch, that's burning, and you can carry that out and you can go to somebody that's in need, and you can take the flame that God's put in your heart and give to them. Now, if you don't go back and get that back in the fire again, it's going to go out, and it's going to smolder, and you can't help people. But there's a constant ebb and flow, a coming and going, a being, we sing a song, I want to be filled so I can be emptied again for his kingdom. It's not all about us and shining with faith. It does start with that, but the reason that God builds great faith in us is he's promised he'd use us to help other people. And for those in our church, I want to challenge you to be praying for Kenny. We talked a lot about what he faces when he goes home as far as school and the positions that God has him in there. How do I do that? He's been transparent with you. You pray for him. And I don't think he's even going to be upset with you. He came up on the church on Sunday. He said, how's it going? How's it going with all that stuff? Not in a snide way, but because you've been there and you know what that is. That's what church family does. We raise each other's arms up and help each other. So there. Okay, we're going to shift gears now a little bit. Okay? And I actually encourage you too, if somebody would be led, I don't want to do it now because we're going to move on to another part of the service, but I'm sure Kenny would welcome if anybody was specifically touched later on today to grab him, take him aside, and pray for him as he heads home. Hunter, you want to come up? We're going to do a baptism this morning, and Hunter's going to come up here. And I've known Hunter for a little over a week now. A little over a week now. It's been a very, very, it's been exciting. It's been interesting. It's been fulfilling. And the hand of God has been working in a powerful way. I'm going to let him share. He's probably, I don't know. How you feeling? Pretty good?
Yeah, I'm all right. No, I'm good.
He's been talking about this on stage fright and all that stuff there. And then the bottom line is in front of a whole bunch of people that he doesn't know. Because most of you, he was in church a week ago today, first time. And so a lot has happened in this past week. And I'm going to let him just share. We'll see how that goes. I might have to ask him a couple questions depending on how that goes. But he's going to take it from here and just do some sharing with you.
My name is Hunter Champagne. I'm a recovering addict. I grew up, me and my mom and my brother, we had to always move because we had never had enough rent money, so schooling was like, we always had to switch schools. So I dropped out in 7th grade, and I've been using for 10 years, and I pretty much want to go to church and have Jesus guide me to stay clean and do the right thing. Yeah, my dad passed when I was 3, and my big brother passed 3 years ago. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I want to walk up and be with him, John. Just share a couple things that happened, and I might ask him a question or two. A week ago Thursday, there was a message on my machine. I don't know when he stopped in to see. He saw Jeff and Peter were there that day, and the message on my machine, I think, is the same reason he stopped at church. Is in his message, it was like, I need to know what time the services are, and there was a lot of other things in there. He says, because I need to. I'm going to say this because it's raw, but it's real. He says, I need to come to hear you guys talk about Jesus and stuff. And when I caught him at church last Sunday, I asked a couple questions, and he was very forthright with what he's just told you. Some of the places he's been and how much he needs Jesus to help him, to have strength to stay away from the things that he's been involved in. But then I asked him, so why come to church? Why all this stuff there? He rolled up his show. Roll up your sleeve. Shows me that.
My big brother gave me that before he passed away.
He looked me square in the eyes. He showed me that. He says, I love Jesus. And Jesus loves you. There you go. You hear that?
Thanks.
And so, continuing on the week's story, I come home because I'm not always really great at these things, and I'm trying to build a bridge and make him feel comfortable because he's new and doesn't know anybody, doesn't know me. And I got home on Sunday afternoon. Tammy, my wife, says, you should get a hold of that guy and see if you can have a cup of coffee or soda with him. So on Tuesday, Hunter and I went to McDonald's.
Yeah.
He had cheeseburgers. I'm trying to watch my weight, so I didn't eat anything. I ate a couple of his French fries. And so that led to a discussion of hearing more about that background. He shared about losing his dad, shared about the bringing up, shared about the things he's struggling with and his need, and he was very transparent and open with me and that kind of thing there, and desperately knowing he needs to change and wanting that strength. And so I shared the gospel with him. I took him through original sin, all that stuff. They tried to bring that down to him and talked about asking and praying and asking Jesus to be heart. And just he looks at me and goes, I want to do that. I need to do that. And so we ended up in the church parking lot out there by the pavilion where it was quiet. And he prayed and asked Jesus to be his Lord and Savior.
Amen.
And then I had told him last Sunday, I said, it's too bad, Hunter, that we're not going to have church here. And I was really concerned because here's a person that really needs godly people around him. You're not going to be at church. And he said, that's okay. I'll be there in 2 weeks. I'll be there when the service starts. But I told him during our time on Tuesday that what we were coming up here for was to be baptized and explain what baptism is. And I don't even know if I asked him about this. He says, I want to do that. I want to do that. And so it was a very natural thing to get there. And since then, we've been around him with the boys. We were working on Dylan's house. He was there 2 days with us there. He's asked some really good questions. And one question came out of his mind as we were picking up a trust the other day because I told him, Jeff gave him a Bible. And I told you what? I told you to read the book of John, right? To get there. And I don't know what else he read. But his question to me as we're lifting trust is, I don't know, there's another guy. I don't know who, if it was James or one of the other guys. We're picking up the trust and he looks at me and goes, I got a question. He said, are we Gentiles or Israelites? Now, listen, for those of you who know your Bible, that means he found something in the Bible that talked about Gentiles and Israelites. And so I gave a quick explanation that, if you look in the Old Testament, being a Gentile wasn't a good thing because it means you weren't part, and being Israelite, the only way you're an Israelite if you're born that way, as bloodline. But then I went on to share with them, but when Jesus died on the cross, he made it possible for the Gentiles to become children of God. And he lit up at that one. I don't remember what you said, but you said something about, Jesus made the way, didn't he? And so there's this thing that it's just a blessing, and I think it's not by chance. I told him that day when we were together, I think over lunch, I said, it's not a mistake that you moved back here. It's not a mistake that you showed up in church. It's not a mistake that he called me and talked to Jeff and got the Bible. It's because God is doing something, and God wants to be there to help him through this stage of life. And I'm telling you, as a church family, he doesn't need just me. He needs you guys. He needs help. He needs help. Not just needs support and people that care and love. And I assured him, he asked me, I said, okay, if I tell him about the addict part of it? I said, absolutely. I said, there's people that are out there that have been where you are or have had family members in that kind of situation. The two guys, the first two, I told them about two other people that struggled with addiction. Guess we're the two first people that saw him show up today and went over, prayed with him. Two people that have been where he's at. And so, I don't know, there's not a whole lot more to say because I don't know him really, really well yet. I've heard enough to know that there's been a hunger and a desire in him to walk with Jesus and a desperation for needing that power and that presence. I'm going to ask Hunter a couple questions here in front of you guys. We've talked about this idea of public confession and the importance of that. And he's got other funny things he can say, but I don't want to say them on tape right now. Not that they're inappropriate, but in case somebody watches it or whatever. But he said, I want to ask him this question. First off, Hunter, do you believe that, do you confess in front of these people that you need forgiveness of sins?
Yes.
Yes. And do you believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins?
Yes.
Yes. And do you come today not before us, but literally, I know you've already done it, but again today before Jesus and asking him for forgiveness of your sins?
Yes.
Yeah. His eyes are awesome. When I look at that, there's life there, and there's, and now the other one, do you commit today to the best of your ability? You've already heard Kenny saying not perfect, saying me I'm not perfect, and it's not all high highs. There's some lows in there, but do you commit today to the best of your ability to turn from your old lifestyle and do your best to follow Jesus in his ways?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you willingly make Jesus the Lord of your life today, putting him in charge?
Yes.
Okay. I want to read to you, many of you have been here for years now of baptismal services. I baptized some of you, and I've always shared a certain set of your scriptures, but Tuesday morning, knowing I'm meeting with him later in the afternoon, I got in my heart Tuesday morning as I woke up early, and I'm not a morning person, but it was one of those days again, I woke up early and I'm out with my Bible, and I really had a sense in my heart that this dude was going to ask Jesus in his heart that day and that he was going to get baptized today at camp. And I was thinking about scriptures and stuff like that, and the Lord immediately reminded me of this one. And it's never one I've used before, but I think it's very pertinent today for where he's at. And it's in Acts chapter 2. Background of that story, day of Pentecost, Spirit falls, crazy stuff happening, earth shaking, flames on the people's heads, and they're talking in other languages. People are hearing the gospel spoken in their native tongues, and it's this wow moment, and they're confused what's going on. And then Peter gets up and preaches that message. And he explains what's going on, explains Jesus being crucified, explains the promise of the Holy Spirit. And he says, these people aren't drunk. It's too early in the day. It's the power of God working. And as he's sharing those things, the people interrupt him and say, wait a minute. What do I need to do? What do we need to do? And this is what Paul said. When they said, brothers, what shall we do? Peter replied, repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus for the forgiveness of your sins, and you'll receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. The promise is for you and your children, and for all who are far off, for all whom the Lord our God will call. I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that God called Hunter. I don't know yet. It's raw enough. I don't even know what all led to him moving here a month ago. He lives really close to church, so that's probably why we were probably the closest church. I don't know how he found it. Doesn't really matter, but God brought him to us, brought him to me, made him call, because God, him who was far off, God has called. And then what's he supposed to do? And that's the interesting thing. Whenever I talk about asking Jesus, I want to do that. And then I said, baptism, I want to do that. And then I kind of dropped the bombshell. I said, well, the other thing we always do is have somebody share a testimony, tell a little bit of their story. And it's like, he says, I'll do it. I'll do it. That's simple. I'll do it. And he's told me a couple times, I'm nervous, but I'll do it. Even today again, I'm nervous, but I'll do it. It's okay. It'll be okay. And so I just want to share with you that the call, that God has brought him close, that he's here today to do those things. He's made these confessions. But I want to stress this morning, because we're going to, as Jeff and I baptize him, this is that theme. There's this idea of, he's already said it, coming to Christ for forgiveness of the past. And then the repentance is that idea of making a decision to change. And sometimes we need help to change, but it also takes an honest decision that I don't want to walk that way anymore. And that's true of you, right? You don't want to walk that way anymore. No. I'm not even sure he has a full understanding of what walking this way means, but there's a hunger and a desire to go in that direction. And you know what? I'm not even sure what it means to take the next step of walking that way. I know more than I did when I started, and you know what? You know more than you did a week ago, don't you? Yeah. Uh-huh. So we're going to go down there, and then the other part of that, and you'll receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. Now, I do believe that when he asked Jesus, when that transaction occurred, the Spirit was given to him as a seal. But I also know as we go in there today and go in that water to be baptized, one of the main prayers I'm going to have, and you can agree with me on that, is that the Spirit of God would fill this guy full to overflowing in power and might, so that he would no longer have the struggle that he's had with substance abuse and all the other things that have entrapped him in life. You and I that have walked with Christ for a long time know how much we need the power of God to help us. And he's come very openly and honestly saying, I need help. I want to be different. And so we're going to do something different that we don't normally do, and I think that's just, again, the nature. I asked him was, okay, we're going to come up in there right now in a second here, and I want to anybody that would like to, let's gather around him and pray for him and ask God to do that, and then we'll go down and do baptism. So let's walk right up here. Anybody that would like to come on up and join with us in prayer. Lord, I just thank you for my friend. Thank you for bringing me into my life, Lord. Thank you for this, what we would say maybe by chance. It's not by chance, Lord. It's a plan. It's a plan. Your plan for him. I just thank you for the privilege of being a part of that, Lord. And I thank you, Lord, from right at the very beginning, from the first time, even on that message, the soft heart that is drawn to you, where the true answers are, Lord. I pray that that would be something that you would protect, is the soft-heartedness, Lord, and the sensitivity to your leading, and willingness and courage to step out into that, to go to places he doesn't know and doesn't understand necessarily, or people he doesn't know, Lord, because he knows that there's something in you that he needs, Lord. I pray that you would just reward that search, the seeking, the soft. Lord, you said that. When we have soft hearts, Lord, you're right there in the midst of it. When we turn to you, when we ask, you give us what we ask for. When we turn to you, you're there waiting for us. And Lord, I pray he would have a real impression, a sense, Lord, of your presence and your comfort and your companionship and all those things wherever he goes, Lord. Lord, I pray that that would be what he started out with, Lord, it's probably who he is in his nature, Lord, that soft, sensitive heart before you. That would be the hallmark, Lord, and that you'd be able to use that for him mightily, Lord. That you would help him to have victory in his life, Lord, but you'd also allow him, Lord, to do the same thing, Lord. You bring him to that spot, Lord, and then he would be instrumental in helping others to get out of the Lord. That he would become salt and the light to people around him, that he would be the light to shine the way. Lord, not that he's necessarily maybe even too many steps ahead of him, Lord, but that he's not afraid to share what you're doing and the difference it's making, the changes, and what he's experiencing in you, Lord. We thank you for those things, Lord. Thank you that you're the friend of sinners, of which we all are. We all are, Lord. We all have things we're ashamed of. We all have made mistakes of which give a friend of sinners. When we have a soft heart to come, Lord, you make up the difference. Your grace and your mercy and your blood flowed to forgive us. Thank you, that's true for him, but thank you, it's true for all of us. And thank you, Lord. Continue, Lord, to help us as a church family, as Christians, to be salt and light, to be friends, to be companions, to be those things that you need us to be in the lives of others, Lord. Allow our light shine in the love like you are. Just thank you for those things. Thank you for this day, and thank you for what you've done already, and what you're going to do in time. Hunter, and your confession of faith and asking Jesus for forgiveness, and your desire to repent and change, and your desire to follow Jesus, and your confession of him as Lord and Savior, we baptize you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
And Lord, today I lift up Hunter and just ask, Lord, would you heal him from patient? And we pray for ongoing healing from your Spirit, Lord. I just lift him up and pray that you would teach him how to walk with you, teach him what it means, and that you would just take what you've started today and continue to carry that out. We know your word says that you will, and so we just commit him to you, commit his future into your hands, and pray for you to guide him, and for you to take care of him. And thank you that you have so far throughout his life protected him and brought him to this day. And so Lord, we thank you and praise you and just pray for you to cover him and protect him in Jesus' name. Amen.
And Hunter, as we went in the water like that, that's totally symbolic of what Jesus has done. His blood on the cross has washed you clean. Has washed you clean. And when God looks at you, because you're what you've done and you've asked for forgiveness, he doesn't see you and all the stuff that you've done. He sees the righteousness and perfection of Jesus. And he is there to forgive sin from this day forward, as long as you ask for that. That's just a cool thing. And then the other thing that we said too, and I'm going to pray that in a second here, is the fact that you're baptized for the forgiveness of your sin and the repentance and the change, but that filling of the Spirit, which is that power factor that sits right in here. That's the power that you can tap into when you feel weak and you need help. Jesus, Spirit, be strong. Let's pray for that. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this young man. I thank you for leading him here, Lord. I thank you for his sensitivity and his willingness, Lord. I thank you for all the symbolism and the reality of what's happened, Lord. The repentance. He wants to change. He's made a decision to change, Lord, and he's going to need your help to change. And Lord, we thank you for that, the repentance. We thank you, Lord, your blood is enough. And like we see, like he's wet from head to toe and shivering and all that, Lord. But Lord, but you have cleansed him, Lord. Your blood has cleansed him from all unrighteousness, Lord, that you see the perfection of your Son and not his misdeeds. Lord, I pray that he would be ready to have a soft heart that would constantly come to you for help, constantly come to you for forgiveness, Lord. And right now, in the name of Jesus Christ, I pray that you fill him full to overflowing with the power of your Holy Spirit. Lord, that would be the source of life from within, life-changing power from within, Lord. Rivers of living water would flow from him, Lord, to others, Lord, but also to nourish his body, Lord. I pray that you would be that source of strength that he's not had thus far in life, that that strength would come within to give him the power to say no and to do the things that you're called to do. I pray for an opening of his understanding and his mind to understand the things of Jesus, Lord, the things he reads in the Word, the things he hears, to understand and readily know how to apply them in life. Just bless it. Pray for victory and pray for wholesomeness, Lord. And I pray that he experience the joy that comes from serving you and the peace that comes from serving you. Thank you for these things.